now we have Vincent DANOS presenting new Tokenomics with some work he's been doing with Julien.
Thank you. So, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me. So I'd like to continue that conversation we've just had with Julien and start to continue thinking about what a token is exactly, and also very much also a follow-up on Florian's empirical discussion of how lawyers see tokens today. So I take one step back and I ask, not how you compute the value or what is the value, but where is the value of a token coming from? And this is not going to be controversial, right? I think it's just so that we all agree. So, and this is essentially, Julien said that near the end of his talk, but never mind. So what we need is a digital platform, DP, on top of which we exchange things that have value. Let's be very abstract, right? Let's even imagine that there's actually money, explicit money flowing. So crypto assets, you call them the way you want, and they have to be, not everything can be projected to a blockchain. But let's just say we're flowing on that digital platform representations of money. Crypto or not, it doesn't matter. And then, and that's the point Julien made so well, because they flow on a blockchain, everyone can publicly verify what is happening on the chain. So it's the transparency effect and the autonomy effect, if you want, as in autonomous application. So we can trust, or maybe we cannot, but let's assume we can trust the system to be completely observable and to follow explicit rules that are followed in a completely autonomous and unstoppable fashion. I think it's not very fashionable to say unstoppable anymore after the DAO, but whatever, it sticks in my mind. Right? So we can design rules that are for everyone to know and everyone to observe and everyone to validate. That I think is a game changer. And therefore, we can attach money or some sort of value, which we're going to call the platform token, to those flows. Whether that token will have value in the economic sense remains to be seen, right? It depends how you bolt your token on the flows of value. But we can try. There are lots of things that you would have to do in a normal process of monitoring that you don't have to do. They come for free. Just look at the chain and see if you like the rules, and see if you invest on the token, and it's for you to agree and validate that everything proceeds according to plan. So now to the discussion, which is front stage also in the talk of Florian, the discussion of whether a token is for users of whatever service or value is flowing on the platform, or for holders of the token. So I mean, it's not the same thing, right? So if you sell me tickets for, a new metro line in Paris to be constructed and open in 2 years, it's not the same thing as an investment. Maybe I'd buy a bunch of tickets, but, maybe you'll give them to me with a discount, and I'm ready to, do my duty as a citizen. And I love to have a line 15, especially if it's useful to me. But that's not an investment. So I think this is kind of a bizarre tension where people are trying to disguise a utility token, a subway ticket, into some kind of investment, or the opposite, sorry, some kind of security as a subway ticket is something we have to just, between us here in this room, we have to stop pretending. These are very different objects. But what is true is that there is a huge tension. So this is my schematics for the tension. So, okay, well, I cannot do that, so never mind. So on the right-hand side, you have some form of activity. And actually, I'd like to find a new name for what I'm going to present here, which is nothing more than a bunch of ideas, which is an activity token, not a usage token, not a security, but a token by activity, which is what Julien said, which is that the token is meant to be of interest to the investors because it serves some form of dividend on the revenues or on the activity, even better, even more abstract, of the platform. Not on the profits, or not on some kind of contentious object that you have to have multiple lawyers around you to make robust. Not that I have anything against lawyers, right? Michel, don't look at me like this. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you have a blockchain, and you have users. Let's forget about the maintainers, because maybe they cloud a little bit the issue. And on the right-hand side, you have that mechanism that allows one to do ICOs, which is a market, or a secondary market, which is not directly related to the chain, which is not on-chain, which is where you buy and sell the tokens, right? And the idea, the tension is that, or the mechanism that we'd like to explore is how you connect the market value with the activity value of the token. So, yes, so maybe I repeat briefly this, because we've said it multiple times, but we cannot build the entire value of a token on a theory of the value of the usage of the token, neither can we just predicate the value of the token on the growth. Actually, the point I like to make in this little conversation we're having is that there are multiple, because we're on a digital platform, and because the rules can be arbitrarily complex, we have a kind of meta smart contract which can articulate the monetary rules of the platform. And that can be, this relationship between the two universes is extraordinarily rich, and there's lots of degrees of freedom. And this is what I would like to explore in the next 15 minutes with you. So I'm going to write TK for the platform token. And I like to design, as it emerged from conversation with Julien, I'd like to discuss with you a way to design the relationship between the token and the activity on the platform, right? And the reason I want to do this is because I like to have a kind of a grammar of monetary policies or monetary rules that will allow me to escape the sterile debate between, you know, usage token and investment token, however you call it, right? So we're not solving the problem. We're just displaying a huge amount of possible mechanisms that will relate them. And like Florian also said, it's, what did you say? It's a sliding scale, right? Actually, it's a multi-dimensional sliding scale. So I'd like to have a... Oh, that makes sense, no? So, which we call a syntax or a grammar. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to skip this, although it's really cool, but maybe for questions. So as I said, we're going to not bother too much about the service is and make things simpler and just assume the service is a monetary value that we're transferring. So it's quite abstract. So the value that is being transferred is not the token, right? It is euros, if you wish. Now, let's say euros, just to fix ideas, right? So we model exchanges, and exchanges have a certain value, and so we assimilate any kind of digital transaction on this system to a certain transfer of euros. And also, the euros are not actually transferred. It's a representation of the euros that is transferred, right? The actual, when the money changes hands or accounts, that's done off-chain by some other mechanism, which we're not going to bother about. And, you know, it could be euros, it could be bitcoins, it doesn't matter. It's probably easier if it's bitcoins. All right, so that's the abstraction. So I'm going to need, we discussed oracles a lot, and I'm going to need one oracle. It's a bit contentious. So I'm going to say that everyone knows at time t how many tokens we get for €1, right? And I'm going to call that CT. So this is the amount of token I get at time t for €1. Or from 1 unit of my reference currency, it doesn't matter. Right, so there are lots of things to say, but let's not go into there about oracles, you know, this market liquidity and all that stuff. Let's just assume this. So CT is something that I would like you to keep in mind. So now I'm going to model the system super abstractly in a kind of a token algebra as a set of agents. So we are not talking, we don't have a coin-centric view here. We have agents. And agents, they have portfolios, I don't know how you say this. So, so a portfolio is a triple. There's a component, the first one, which is phi for fiat, clever notation. That's the amount of money that agent A has loaded on the platform, so for which I have representation by some kind of mechanism, escrow. It's not going to this. Tau, that's the amount of free token I have on the platform. So it's part of my wallet, if you want. I have a composite wallet with a representation of fiat, a representation of token, and then I have a bunch of captured tokens that have conjoined some representation of value in euro and some amount of token. And that is the platform token we're talking about. And the idea is the monetary policy, or policies, or the grammar of monetary policies is about how, sorry, first of all, the idea number one is that representation of values that are not joined with a token of the platform are actually not allowed to flow. Of course, there's a limit case where you ask for 0 token to flow, so that's also possible. That would be a monetary rule, which would be trivial. So value alone does not flow in the system. Token alone does not flow either. If you want to flow value on your system, you have to join them in some kind of manner. And the kind of manner that the platform or the contract, because you can contextualize this easily, is going to ask you to follow the manner of joining them. That is what we call a monetary rule. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore a very simple one. And then we'll take a step back and we'll go we'll look at all the other ways that come immediately to mind after we've seen just the simplest possible example. Right now, I'm sure you have more ideas. So mu, that last component of the wallet of an agent, that is a formal sum of pairs of token and value with a timestamp, which I think is written here. Okay. So I need the timestamp information. We'll see why. So the entire state of the system can be again seen as a formal linear accumulation of portfolios. And I'm going to present the basic modifications of this state of the system, which you can think of as a UTXO representation for Bitcoin. I'm going to represent this, the basic modifications, the semantics of the basic instructions or transactions as differences to that state of the world. Because it's all linear algebraic, so I can do that. We'll see this, what it means in a second. So to load on the system, I just add x to my first component. How I do it is not represented in the model. Maybe I have enough chain escrow mechanism. To unload, I can subtract, provided that I don't subtract more than I have. And that's the way to get back the actual value which was represented on the chain. Then I can do two things, which are I can actually construct active value that can flow by minting. So to mint, I have to take a certain amount of fiat, phi. Then I have to pick up an instant in time. And what I do is I subtract the fiat, because now I join it with a certain amount of token. And then I create my new object, which is my active value, phi tau at t.
Was it not x minus phi? You started with x and you take out phi? It's not that? X was not your initial amount of currency?
So there is something which is understood in the notation. So I'm assuming that I never take more than I have. And then I express the semantics of my modifications to the portfolio, or the wallet, just by the difference. So it's a derivative semantics, if you want. So here it means take phi from that column, and you create phi tau at time t on the third column. Well, now let's have a look at what we do in the middle column. This is where we're taking, it's a minus, so we're taking some amount of token. And what we're taking depends on the current price. So this is what I'm calling the oracle of the token on the market. So what it really means is if you want to make that amount of value transferable on my platform, if you want to activate it, you have to take a certain amount of token, which is written in a fraction of that value. And so the actual amount of token you're going to take from the token market, which we assume here through the oracle, is going to depend on CT, the amount of token I can get at time t for my for 1 unit of currency of phi. And alpha, I would like to call the traction. Let's say it's a constant here. So maybe it says that if you want to flow 100 euros on the next transaction, to do that, you have to take maybe 1% of it and buy tokens with that. And this is when you put them together that you have activated whatever you want to transfer. Okay, so that's our mini rule. And of course, the alpha is a parameter. So why do we call it the traction? Well, suppose you have tokens, or suppose actually I'm putting on the table some kind of pre-sale agreement and I'd like you to buy my tokens. I'm going to have to make some kind of case that the token will be sought for. And that is a mechanistic rule that tells you how much will be sought for per unit of value that is transferred on the chain. It tells you 1% of it will be turned into that amount of euros that will be a traction or an upward pressure on the price of the token. Right? So okay, let's forget about the rule because there are plenty more we can formulate. What we're doing here is we are transforming a business plan, which is a growth perspective, into an actual prediction on the demand, depending on the structure of the market, on the token side. So we've done what we said. We have this activity on the blockchain is your business plan, and we have created an engrenage, as people say in French, between the blockchain and the secondary market. And this is the social contract for the token holder, right? Or the token investor. This is what we're selling to him or her. Okay, so then of course, once we can buy and sell, these are also, we can burn, this is very interesting. We can burn with token conservative burning. We can split, and we can actually do transactions. I'll pass you the details, but it's completely obvious that you can formulate all the tiny microscopic transition in the system the way you want now. So this is the full excruciating series of transactions that you need to buy a digital pizza on the platform. You need to load, buy, you need to mint, because if you don't mint, then you cannot buy. Then you do your transaction, then you melt whoever. So, you know, there's lots of possibilities. As we said, it's a grammar, right? So it's not prescriptive about which rule you should actually use. And well, maybe let me comment a little more on this. I think, I don't really think, so this is this assembly language for money transfers on the platform. I don't really think we should put them together in a way that's blockchain-wide. I think there should be a little bit like our younger colleague earlier, Louis, was saying. He's checking his email, but we should have governance should go into the contract, and maybe monetary rules should somewhat go into the contract, which is a little bit of a pickle for the token holder, because then this means you're going to sign on monetary policies that you don't know yet. So it's another additional governance problem. Because Louis, you didn't talk much about money, but you know, it's all about some form of, I mean, it's, well, better not say anything. All right, so another thing I'd like to show you is that once you have a precise representations of what's happening on the chain, you can start attacking your chain. So this is the transcription of an attempt of a big player on the secondary market to pump up the value of the token by buying a lot of it, and then to construct this paired token value pairs at a very high price for the token, which means at a very low CT, and then to realize the transaction and then to resell on the market. So the effect of this, if you follow the calculation, is that I can completely work around, if I'm a big player on the secondary market, on the traction. I can actually make the effective traction on the market go to 0. But that's okay in this case, because you can actually attack the secondary market directly if you know how to do this. So this is a kind of, it reduces the attack on the mechanism to an attack on the market. And then, you know, we're not, this is not a new problem. Okay, so this was the constant traction model, where the dividend is not on profit, but on revenue or activity. And it feels very natural. There are other models of profit, by the way. You can just have a kind of a flat tax on every type of transaction. But I think from the revenue distribution perspective, you can give them to miners, but that's not the same thing as token holders. So if you use flat taxes like VAT style revenues on the platform, you'll be driven into asking every token holder to be a miner, and that looks a little too tightly coupled, right? You see what I'm saying? So, you know, I mean, or to invent a new scheme to distribute, but then you have to distribute in a fair way, which is decentralized, so this is complex. Here, it's completely decentralized and transparent, right? And it's the token that someone who is actually flowing value on the platform will need to buy. That token is everyone's. You don't have to be a miner, you don't have to be anyone. You'll get to feel the impact of this, the price impact as anyone else, proportional to the amount of tokens you hold, right? So that's one definition of fairness, right? So everything holds on hinges on the fact that you can publicly verify every transaction, so that the actual, you know, you cannot work around the rules, and if the rules are not, the rules will be ideally enforced by the community of validators. And there's a tiny tension I'm not going to talk about here between that requirement of transparency and, you know, confidentiality, privacy. So, but you know, we can talk about this another time. So where does this get us? So this is my last slide. So I'm good with the time? Okay, perfect. So now we've seen this constant traction model, but we don't have to do constant traction on the market, right? We can do all sorts of prompts, programmable monetary policy. There's a huge number of degrees of freedom. You know, one example would be to exert traction on the token in a way that is actually related to the price of the token. So, for example, if I want to stabilize things, I can pull fewer tokens proportionally if I judge that the token has a high price, to cool down the economy, right? To cool down the price of the token. If the token is low, then I can ask to buy more proportional to the value being transferred to whoever wants to use it. This is all. These are rules, right? We can write them from the beginning. This is probably difficult intersections with the principle that many speakers reminded us of previously, which is that you want your system to be evolvable. So maybe we shouldn't use completely explicit rules. We should maybe formulate the rules as optimization objectives or things like this. But you get the general idea, right? So I can introduce at that stage a stabilizing mechanism if I want to, which is interesting. I can also, we've not talked about this, but I can also program the life cycle of my token. Maybe I can, so we looked at we have basic instructions to burn a little bit of the token at a certain rate. We can also connect the loss or gain of value of the token with events that are causally related to the actual initial minting event. So typically in this kind of service, we'll have some kind of architecture where the token is actually going through multiple steps and multiple hands. If these guys are captured, is this kind of finite state machine eating up the tokens, or Petrinet, I should say rather, is actually part of the contract, then there's nothing prevents you, since everything is observable of the history of this trace on the chain, then nothing prevents you from manipulating the relationship between the token and the value following that history. So a vast amount of possibilities, which I call the token lifecycle. And so I end up with a question to you. I mean, to the extent that we came to an agreement on what the hell I was saying. Do you have other rules in mind that you could project on that kind of structure? Number one. Number two, do you recognize existing, because there are, like Florian said, there's a zoo, a jungle, in a tropical, Precambrian explosion of tokens and rules. Do you recognize some of the ones you've liked and noticed over the last few months? Thank you.
Any questions for Vincent? In the back.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for this amazing presentation. I think I'm going to have to dive in your model once again in order to perhaps comprehend it a little bit more. I have a big question for you. What do you do with the actual volume of the currency, especially when you're talking about burning? The purpose of burning is to reduce the available volume of currency. And one other thing that I didn't see in your model is mining. Like when we are talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, we have an exogenous, to your model at least, condition of emission of the volume. And speaking about monetary policies, most of the current monetary policies heavily rely on volume shocks of the available quantity of money that are flowing into the economy. So yeah, like what do you do with volume? Do you think your model is compatible with it? Does it already encompass it? And I didn't see it. So yeah, tell me about it.
Thank you. So I'll take the second question first. So about the consent, the system that I described is largely independent of the consensus model that's running the chain. As long as the chain is, transparent and reliable and immutable and unstoppable, we're fine with it. The first question, that is the question, right? So, of course, monetary policies are contracting the token mass, for example, to get some kind of effect. So this is just a grammar for language that you could use to do this. If you want to know when to contract your monetary policy, then you have to turn to Julien and ask him to work a little bit some more and give you what's the fundamental value of the token. And with the fundamental value of the token, I think there will be inherently a prescription about how you manage your monetary mass, and you have essentially two parameters, I think, in the simplest instance. The monetary mass, which you can, this is why I had this thing. So this is the pinkish thing. This is the extent to which the platform is a token holder, which is so this is your reserve of money. So you can play on that. If you have enough, you can burn it. You know, if your revenues are sufficient. And the other one is the so that may be in the hands of some other actors on your platform, but that's the price of the service, which you can choose to modify to make a time-dependent amount. And I think it's essentially playing with these two things that you can jointly optimize for Mr. User and Mr. Holder. And it's a multi-dimensional optimization problem, so I don't think you can make them both maximally happy. But I guess in this case, I mean, economists know how to formulate the good, structurally good properties of solutions. But I cannot, so ask them.
Other question?
Hi, Vincent. I'm Sylvie from Clear Karma, which is a platform, let's say, validation as a service platform backed by blockchain. And it exactly made me think what you said to something that is quite similar to what we do, actually, because Clear Karma, karma means responsible action. Our action that we manage with what we do is validation. That's the action of validation that we get monetized in this case. And what is the value that we create? It's impact. Impact which is of cost savings or getting more revenues because you have a more validated product or service. So that's also maybe another view as an input for you to see how to explain what you're doing. In this case, there's a cost, a token cost, let's say, of doing the activity, and there's also the value which has to do more with the impact of having done this action, maybe.
But it's an impact that you measure on chain, or is it kind of an outside of chain impact?
The impact is, I mean, actually, the good thing about having the activities also monitored on chain is that we can also record and monitor the impact, of course.
Okay, so it's off-chain, but it's also somewhat on the chain.
I mean, you can do both in this case. I mean, everything is possible. We can define it,
But, I mean, so if impact is defined by a role, and there's enough data on the chain so that the role can be decisive, then, it's an interesting suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe just to help you work on the model about how to explain these things. Of course, impact is actually more external because it involves other stakeholders, maybe which are not let's say in the platform, but that could be a way to see it. I mean, your activities is doing something that has an impact, which brings a value, and as long as let's say it costs less than the value that it brings, then there's room for, let's say, for having a higher price for the token. When it's the contrary, then of course the price will reduce, maybe to make it easier to understand.
So I think I'm the last one in the session, right? So we can take questions for everyone, I guess. Yeah.
Sorry if it's a philosophical question, and maybe you've mentioned it, but as it's a pure system of creation of wealth, where does the redistributive side should appear on the chain? Should it be at the beginning, at the end? Talking about VAT, you were just mentioning VAT at the beginning, but we are very much redistribution minded, in France. It's pure creation of wealth. So where should the state taxes and all this redistribution should be implemented on this chain, if it has to be?
Right. So I think we mentioned that already. No? So this is very agnostic with respect to redistribution. redistribution is tricky in a decentralized system, I think. It's fair to say this, right? Here you have a model of redistribution which is perfect, but it redistributes proportional to your stakes, right? And that may not be what you want. So if you want to redistribute in the everyday sense of redistribution, then you have to come up with additional gadgets. I don't know much about this, but I'm sure lots of people have thought about this.
Actually, sorry, not really. But I mean, just thinking about it now, the issue of redistribution is always the issue of identity. No, I mean, if you're a decentralized system and if you don't have identity, and that's one big issue in the blockchain world in general. It's hard to create system with clear identity where you cannot duplicate it. And if you have not answered that, you cannot really redistribute, no? Because so I think this.
Yes, I mean, if you think naively, you could say, okay, well, I'll redistribute with a decreasing redistribution factor proportional to your stakes, but then no one knows who your tokens are and how many you have. So it's really difficult. Non-proportional redistribution schemes in a decentralized way, is that an open problem? Okay, so in this room it seems like it's an open problem.
I think it reduces to the identity problem, as you said.
Exactly. You have to solve a problem that looks hard to begin with. You have to have some... But Daniel has worked on identity blockchains, right? But, okay. But you could combine the two ideas and maybe distribute according to your identities. Would be interesting.
Bruno, you had one question? Okay. Daniel.
So this is a question for Florian. So you were very quick on stable coins and, for instance, Tether. So there was a single slide. Could you? So for me, it's like minting money, but maybe for you, it's a token. So could you elaborate on this?
I didn't get the first part of the question. Stable coins? No.
You had a slide on stable coins.
Yes,
you were very quick on that, and for me, it's like money creation, but apparently for you, it's a token. So could you please explain this to us?
No, it is a monetary question. So. Stable coins, I mentioned them because they already exist supposedly on the blockchain. So there is a project called Maker, which is actually the oldest project on the Ethereum blockchain of all projects ever. They basically launched right with the network launch, and they have a 2-token model where one token is free floating on the market, and the other one then is somehow turned into being stable relative to I think the US dollar. And it's a scheme of over collateralizing this stable coin with another cryptocurrency, and then giving it some leeway with regards to fluctuations of the US dollar. So that's more or less the idea. It's been widely criticized. At the same time, it's still there after 3 years, and has recently, I think, been refinanced, the project, so there is a growing number of people working around it. Then there is Basecoin, which has collected a lot of money in primarily the United States, and it's a big project as well. They have serious venture capitalists funding it. I think they actually want to go towards redistribution on the blockchain. And then you have Sweetbridge, that's also such a coin of that sort. And I'm sure a number of more that I forgot. Yeah. And then you have other kinds of stable coins. As I said, they are just simply pegged to euros or dollars just by having, like Tezos. Not Tezos, Tether. Tether, sorry, not Tezos, I know. Tether is supposedly, I mean, it's pegged to the US dollar, and supposedly they have reserves of many billions of dollars on some account that nobody knows where it is. You get the drift. I cannot really say much more to that, because I think I lack the education as an economist to really tell you how to ultimately build a stable coin. I mean, the European Central Bank also has that job, right? I mean, build a stable coin called euro, and they fail at it. So why should the crypto people know how to do it? No, yeah, I'm handing over to the economist now to kind of save what I said.
No, but just what I said. Okay, but just one thing. So basically, all these stablecoins, more or less, they are collateral, so they are pegged to some either crypto money or fiat money. The only thing I want to say, I don't know the detail, is that pegged currency is the same thing. So the pesos, the Mexico pesos with the dollar. So pegged currencies work for a while, but the other lesson from history is that no peg in the history of mankind has survived. All the pegs that have been created have been attacked and destroyed. So they can live for 20 years, but at one point they are destroyed. So so maybe the crypto world will give us the first peg that survived an attack, but that's our history outside of the crypto world, is that one day they are attacked and they are wiped out. Yeah.
Yeah, if I may interject on this, just the there was also maybe you alluded also to one project which was called Stable, which became variable on Ethereum. And the other thing, though, I mean, with what Julien is saying, is that in terms of purchasing power, and if you look at the work that's been done recently by central banks, I mean, I think it would be fair to say that they've improved over stabilizing the value, of even the euro, over time. Now you can always say until the next, crisis, but in terms of purchasing power that it gives you for real economy goods, I think there's, it would be unfair to say that no progress has been made.
No, of course, no. What I wanted to say, just like strong peg, like Tether, which is $1 for one Tether, like really strong peg, where you say I'm going to convert on a stable base, like the pesos in Mexico was in the 90s, and then you say I'm going to stock some dollar on the side, in case you need it. Historically, they have all been destroyed sooner or later.
That's true.
That's all. It's a strong peg. I
mean, even in Switzerland, actually, that's about 6-7 years ago. The peg on the Swiss franc.
Actually, the Ethereum Foundation profited massively from that.
Any other question?
I just have a remark for the presentation of Vincent. In your model, you have a time oracle based on time. And as I understand, your actions in your model looks instantaneous. But in a cryptocurrency platform, they are not instantaneous. Maybe you should take into account the duration of the actions.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Do you want to expand on the question, or because
No, it's an excellent remark. And there are also other problems, like what's the price, right? I mean, if you have a deep market and it's super liquid, then you have a price. But I don't think even today, let's say, can I write a contract which an ordinary contract, which uses the notion of exchange rate between Ethereum and US dollars, for example?
Yeah, you have oracles for that. But they are not on-chain oracles there, I guess. Yeah.
They probably don't agree, no?
Exactly. There are a lot of people that would voluntarily tell you what the supposed exchange rate is.
Of course, you can make up an exchange rate. That's easy. Or
you can make an algorithm, like you can use, I don't know, Schelling algorithm or something like that, where people will put the observation. Okay. They're incentivized. In that case, you can also say the miner could be dishonest. I mean, you can have an on-chain solution that will tell you the exchange price.
I see.
If you use the Schelling algorithms. Yeah, it's correct. I mean, you can say someone might lie, everyone might lie, and then everyone loses money. but then it's like saying, yeah, the miner might be unreliable.
So what people do today, in fact, is they go to Oracleize, and they just give you a straightforward, you know, data dump from a centralized web service. That's the state of the art. It's quite sad.
I don't think an Oracle can give you more information than is available. And these cryptocurrencies are not traded in a centralized market. They're traded in many fragmented markets, and there are large price discrepancies across markets. So it's not going to be an easy job. Not even mentioning the question of Oracle and anything like that. It's not easy to find a price.
Well, some people do try to do arbitrage, and
yes.
I mean, somehow I agree with you. There are discrepancies, but it's like saying there are discrepancies in price. There are always some that tend to resolve over time, right?
No.
You have to take that as an assumption.
Yeah.
Any modeling effort.
So it's another aspect of the problem.
But
there's not even a price.
But going back to Bruno's comment, the financial, the crypto markets are so fragmented that if you look at what traders are doing, some of them are still able to make very extremely large profits, which you clearly don't see in mature centralized markets. So the arbitrage function of traders is not yet fully exploited or exhaustive, I guess. Two questions. Ilham, you had one? No? Okay, sorry. Who had, I thought I saw a hand here. No?
Just to understand more your model, token users have to hold it at some point. I don't understand this Venn diagram behind you.
Yeah, you don't really hold subway tickets, do you?
Okay, like it's about a...
You don't have a box with tens of thousands of
That's right.
tickets, right?
Okay, I understand better.
As you go.
Yeah, you're right. And second question, when do you mean the platform on this diagram? Do you mean the actual blockchain or do you mean the exchange?
No, I mean the blockchain, sorry.
The blockchain.
Yeah,
and so where does it factor in the exchanges, like Binance and, BitNext, whatever, Kraken, because they have a very paradoxical role.
Sure, totally. We decided to completely ignore the problem.
I really like it. It's very straightforward, and that was really interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think maybe we can, leave it here for the session, and thank you all to all great three speakers. We'll have a quick break, and the last session will start in 10 minutes, no more.